All right, we're going to go ahead and get started with June's webinar Wednesday. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And then Harriet, if you would be so kind as to let me know, can you see?
Yep.
Thank you so much. It's always fun when you start a webinar thinking people can see your screen and they cannot. So welcome once again. I really want to thank our guest speakers today. Harriet Redman, the Executive Director of Wisconsin's, and Lynn Gall should be joining us momentarily. And we're going to learn about, once I give a high-level overview of RCAW and the things that we offer, we are going to get a high-level then I'm going to turn it over to Harriet and Lynn, and we're going to hear about Wisconsin's working caregivers and strategies and resources for employers. A few housekeeping before we get started. If you would be so kind to keep yourself on mute, that would be very much appreciated, just to cut back on background noise. And also, you can feel free as I'm talking to stop me and ask me questions. I'll leave time at the end for myself for Q&A, as well as when our guest speakers are done speaking. You can also type into the chat. If you're asking questions about RCAW, my colleague who typically moderates chat is unable to join us. I will see them, but I will check them once I'm done speaking, just because it's easy to get it's hard to do both at the same time. So without further ado, let's get started. RCAW, we serve all 72 counties, and we serve family caregivers caring for their loved ones through the lifespan. So like I said, we serve all 72 counties and 11 tribes. Respite care, I'm certain that most of you know what respite care is if you are here today. However, there are times that people that come and they're not quite sure. So essentially what it is, it can be planned, and it also absolutely happens on an emergency basis, and it gives a caregiver caring for their loved one a short break to tend to their own needs. There are an immense amount of benefits to respite care. Oftentimes, caregivers report they feel isolated, they feel completely overwhelmed and drained, so they are able to increase their social engagement and decrease that isolation. And isolation really plays a big factor into mental health. It can help them relax, it can boost their social, emotional, and physical health. Oftentimes, caregivers report that they've lost their sense of identity. And when they're able to get that break, whether they're going to do things around the house or spend time with other loved ones, they get to do things that help them feel like themselves and feel whole. And they get to fill up their gas tank and do what they do longer with respite care. It can provide assistance and support. Oftentimes, it can prevent bad habits for caregivers. The stress, anxiety, depression, overwhelming feelings sometimes tend to lead people to, towards things that might not be healthy for them overall. And the other thing that I really like to stress whenever I'm talking about respite care, it's also a huge benefit to the care recipient. Whenever a caregiver is burnt out and exhausted, of course, that they love their jobs and they loved their loved ones and caring for them, but it's around the clock. It's an around the clock job. So when they are burnt out and exhausted, the care recipient can absolutely feel that energy, regardless of their age or their diagnosis. So giving them that opportunity to do have creative engagement with a respite care provider is just as beneficial to the care recipient as the caregiver. I'm going to get into our grant programs in just a bit, but we love data at RCAW. And when we administer the Caregiver Respite Grant Program, which you'll learn about in a second, we always like to ask them, we ask them survey questions, but we like to know what are the top 3 challenges, and they're feeling completely overwhelmed, the financial burden, in socialization or lack of socialization, like I talked about with the isolation earlier. We always like to know, what did they get to do with their respite time? and the majority get to spend times with other friends and family members. Oftentimes, caregivers report that they find strains on all types of relationships in their life. Some of them get to have time to do hobbies, do things around the house, do whatever they like to do. It's personal to that person. They get to spend time with their spouse or partner, participate in social activities, and like I said, get things done around the house. And oftentimes caregivers who get respite, sometimes they're doing it to tend to their own medical needs that they're not able to tend to without that break. There are absolutely barriers to respite care, and I will tell you about them, and I'll tell you how our CEW breaks down those barriers. Oftentimes caregivers can be too proud to accept help. There's a lack of providers, respite care providers out there. Affordability, we saw a few slides back, some of the second top reported challenge was the finances. And oftentimes what we hear from caregivers is they're nervous hiring a stranger, and that can be a barrier. And then we'll get into how we break them down. And for professionals on the call, when you're working with a family caregiver who might be contemplating respite but have some reservations, always reframe it that it's also a benefit to the care recipient and not just to them. And it's really important. I know it is easier said than done, but it is really important to be proactive versus reactive. Like I said earlier, sometimes we do have respite. We help individuals on an emergency basis, and having a plan in place can really help if there is an emergent situation. When I say plan in place, it's someone they know that can step into their shoes and take over while they tend to their own needs. One of the programs that we offer are free training opportunities. All of this can be found on our website, and I can list it in the chat as soon as I'm done. And the first one I want to talk about is the respite care provider training. This is a free course. It's online. You can start and stop and work at your own pace. You do get a certificate of completion for 7 hours once you're done. People who complete the respite care provider training successfully, they then have the choice to be listed on the Wisconsin Respite Registry, which I'll talk about in a little bit. These are the courses that it covers: what is respite, disability basics, client care, medication awareness, safety procedures, caring for challenging moments, wellness, household respite activities, professional ethics and interpersonal skills, meeting with the client and the caregiver and care recipient, and next steps in becoming a respite care provider. Something that our CAW really believes in is keeping respite care providers engaged in continuing education opportunities for them. If someone completes the respite care provider training, we do offer continuing education opportunities. I do have, so the Dementia Capable Wisconsin, I'll talk about just a little bit more. I have a dedicated slide to it. We can also help offset the cost to conferences or workshops, as well as there's this direct course, the online curriculum for community living. There's 45 different courses that kind of hone in on specific diagnosis just to get some more training. So we think, thanks to a federal grant, we're able to offset the cost and cover them. So anyone who completes the respite care provider training, they can then go on and get more specialized training depending on what population they would like to provide respite care for. All of this can be found in the kit for respite care providers. One of the things that we developed, I shouldn't say we because I cannot take credit for it, Val Madsen, our training and development specialist, developed the Becoming an Independent Respite Care Provider and How to Market Yourself as a Respite Care Provider. And all of this goes back to our CAW's mission to promote, support, and expand quality statewide respite care across the lifespan. So the Becoming an Independent Respite Care Provider really gives anyone the tools that they need in order to start, because it can be overwhelming to think about becoming an independent provider and working for yourself. There's so many benefits to doing it, but we like to give the building blocks to people who need it. Also, how to market yourself as a respite care provider. The why behind that course is a few years back, before this course was developed, we had people come to us and say, okay, I completed the training and I'm on the registry, now what? And knowing the great need for respite care providers out there, we wanted everyone to have what they needed to be able to market themselves, to get clients and let people know, hey, I'm a provider and I'm looking for new clients. We also have a kit for caregivers. It can be overwhelming. I feel like that's the buzzword today, and I've said overwhelming a lot, but it's so very true. It can be really overwhelming when you finally get to the place where you think, I absolutely need the break, but I don't even know where to start. So there's a course, how to hire, train, and retain respite care providers. We know one of the barriers to a caregiver potentially going through a course is there's just not time or energy to go through the entire course. We welcome people to do it. However, we do supply on the website the 7 main documents that are in the course, where a caregiver can go read about the course, get the high level overview, and just kind of grab and go with the documents about how to run a background check, and just general orientation and interview questions and things that are important to do when hiring someone. We do have specialized training for family caregivers caring for a loved one, or friends and family rather. This is a partnership with UW Oshkosh, so we're able to cover the cost for friends and family members. Like I said, caring for someone with memory issues. However, if someone's a professional and they want to take general care provider, you can take first on dementia specialist course. They're both online, work at your own pace. We do ask that you take the respite care provider training first. All right, the registry. I spoke a little bit about it earlier. Once someone completes the respite care provider training, they have the option of being listed on the registry. Now, this is one of the barriers also that I talked about earlier, being a lack of providers and how our CAW tries to break down those barriers. There's no cost to be listed on the registry. There's no cost to search the registry. And it consists of either individuals who have taken the respite care provider training or agencies. Now, we don't list every agency in the state of Wisconsin. It's agencies that have come to us and filled out the form and said they're able to take on new clients and help provide respite care. We do have a registry compliance. It's every 60 days. There's an automated email. Well, they get 3 emails asking anyone on the registry to please verify that their contact information is still the same. And I'm going to go to this just while I talk so you can kind of see what a potential registry profile can look like. This is someone on our registry, but we ask providers to, whether they're individual or agency or an agency, to verify that their contact information is still the same and that they still want to be on the registry and they're able to take on new clients. Because the thing is at the end of the day, our CAW, we are not the employer of people listed on the registry. We provide the bridge, people who need the respite to people who provide it. But we really just don't want the end user, a family caregiver, trying to call people on the registry and they haven't been taking new clients for months. So that's the why behind the compliance and having them verify. So the end user can search by the county in which they live and then the age of the care recipient, and then it auto populates anyone available in their area. All right, I want to get into our grant programs. First, we're going to talk about our most used and loved grant by the whole state of Wisconsin, our Caregiver Respite Grant Program. Then I'll talk about our core grant, our group respite grant, and our supplemental respite grant. So I can make this PowerPoint available to anyone who would like it. I always post it on our website. So these are a lot of words on the slide, but this is if you wanted to download it and have this for future use. But essentially, anyone can be eligible for this grant. We do ask that they try another program first. And we have a supporting documentation form. It's fillable online. We ask that the ADRC or the county, depending on the age of the care recipient, verify that an applicant has applied for a long-term care waiver or another grant program, and they're not expected to receive approval within 30 days. If they've been denied services, sometimes there's the functional screen that can, someone can be denied for those services. If they've applied for and they've exhausted their funding, typically that's with the NFCSP or AFCSP, the National Family Caregiver Support Program, and the Alzheimer's Family Caregiver Support Program. I always have to remember when I use acronyms to say them out loud because it can be a lot. If they've applied for, but they need the flexibility to hire a friend or family member, that's geared towards parents with children living with intellectual and or developmental disabilities, or if they've not applied for a long-term care waiver support because they're ineligible. Sometimes that can be if they're over assets. And the really nice thing is, going back to a barrier, this grant can cover if anyone chooses to hire an individual, a friend, a family member, an agency. Sometimes if a family caregiver might be nervous to hire from an agency. Now, I'm not endorsing or saying that you should or shouldn't be, but this is what we hear working with family caregivers. This allows a family caregiver to hire whoever they would like. Our CAW shows no preference to who is hired. We just want that family caregiver to get a break. And people can reapply every 6 months. It used to be every 90 days, but then this grant program absolutely picked up momentum and with outreach, and we get inundated with applicants, which is great. That means that we're able to help people and they can get the break, but now it's every 6 months. The core grant, this is for agencies to apply for. It's anything that's going to recruit more respite care providers or educate family caregivers. It's a one-time award for a one-time event, up to $3,000. There's a core grant event happening in Kenosha and Racine next week on June 8th. It's at a community college there, Gateway Community College, and it's a big family caregiver resource fair and respite resource fair, and it's real exciting. But there's other on our website, there's examples, examples of other ways people have used the money for these events, and they're great. The group respite grant, it's exactly what it sounds. It's to provide respite for a group. Oftentimes it's used for caregiver cafes, support groups, book clubs, any kind of parent meetup. Sometimes people can't come to these things because there's no respite care. They don't have someone to stay with the care recipient. So a successful applicant applies and they hire an outside agency and provide respite right on site, so the caregiver can come and join in on whatever activity is going on. The supplemental respite grant program, this is, I want to get to this slide so you can see what the allowable expenses are. It's the same eligibility criteria as the caregiver respite grant. So as long as an applicant has tried something else first, this grant can help cover home modifications, technology to decrease isolation, lawn care, snow removal, transportation. I will say the most used is for housekeeping. So this can give you $250 every 6 months. So it's up to $500 a year to help offset these costs. And knowing that a caregiver can get help in the home, even if it's housekeeping, that still is respite because it's giving them a break. And that's what we're all about. All right, that was a very quick high level. This is how you can get a hold of us. Like I said, I will absolutely have this PowerPoint available on our website. I'm going to go ahead and stop share. I did earlier get my internet is unstable, so I'm gonna leave my leave my camera off just to make sure I have the bandwidth, and I would love to turn it over to Harriet and Lynn. And they have, Lynn, I'm gonna go ahead and also make you a co-host.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll turn it over to you. And whenever you would like me to launch the poll questions, I'm happy to do so.
Sure. Why don't you go ahead and launch that poll question right now?
All right.
Can you do that while I'm sharing my screen? Okay.
Absolutely.
We're trying to get an idea of who's with us here today. We're going to be talking about how we can support working caregivers and their employers. And we'd like to know today who's with us. If you're an employer, please let us know. And if you're a family caregiver, please let us know.
Thank you. So there are 4 questions. And once the poll has been completed, I would love to launch the results. We'll just give everyone about a minute. I see about a third of the participants have answered the questions. If everyone can just take a peek at the poll, this is going to help Lynn and Harriet know who's on and collect that really important data on this extremely important topic of working caregivers. All right.
Okay. So it looks like we do have some employers on with us today, which is wonderful. Thank you very much. And employers with caregiving responsibilities, 33% of you are that. Other 50%. And who do we care for? We've got multiple answers here: aging parents, a spouse, or a neighbor, a friend, or other. So that's great. And how supported do you feel being a family caregiver and working? With 5 being very supported, and I see only 17% felt that way. And then 17% gave a 4, 33% gave a 3, and 17% again for 2 and 1. So it looks like some people are feeling very supported and others are not. So be interesting to hear more from you later about why that is. If you were an employer, how many of your employees are also family caregivers? And look like some new. It's good to see you didn't know that there are a lot of don't knows. That's kind of surprising because one of the things we found through doing this is that a lot of employers, maybe larger employers, do not necessarily know. So that's great.
Great.
Okay, so can we get rid of that? Okay. Well, welcome. Are you seeing my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I want to begin by thanking the Respite Care Association of Wisconsin for inviting us today to speak about some survey results that are soon to be released by the Wisconsin Family and Caregiver Support Alliance. I also thank the participants today for taking time to learn about emerging efforts to form partnerships with businesses to help them support their employees. My name is Lynn Gall, and I am a co-lead for the Wisconsin Family Caregiver Support Alliance. We have a work group that conducted a survey that we're discussing today. I'm also the Family Caregiver Support Programs Manager for the Wisconsin Department of Health Services, and it's located in the State Office on Aging. The programs I manage provide direct services and educational supports and resources to caregivers of older adults, grandparents, and older relatives raising children, and older adults caring for adult children with disabilities. I also just became the manager for the state's lifespan respite program, which works hand in hand with our CAW. So this is a great fit today. I'm sorry, I popped ahead before I meant to. The Wisconsin Family Caregiver Support Alliance was formed by representatives from like-minded organizations to address the needs of family members and friends who are providing ongoing care in their homes. Our
Lynn?
mission is, yes.
I don't mean to stop you, but I don't want to assume incorrectly. We still see the slide, are you an employer struggling to hire and retain workers?
Oh, that's not what I want you to be saying.
I'm glad I said something. I was like, I don't know if I should interrupt.
Not that what you will be saying is all that much more exciting.
There we go.
There we go. Is that what it's supposed to look like? Okay. Yeah, well, I'm not starting over. So the Wisconsin Family and Caregiver Support Alliance was formed by representatives from like-minded organizations to address the needs of family caregivers and friends who are providing ongoing care to someone living at home who needs some help. Our mission is to provide resource coordination, increase access to supports, and sustain Wisconsin families into the future. Several years ago, our alliance identified employers and working caregivers as two groups who would benefit from better resource coordination and increased access to programs that already exist in every Wisconsin community. Our goal at the end of this project we're working on is for every employer in Wisconsin to know about our state's aging and disability resource centers, our family caregiver support programs, and other community organizations that are dedicated to helping families and friends live their best lives while providing care in the home. The Wisconsin Family Caregiver Support Alliance believes that we can help employers overcome some of the barriers that exist to hiring employees by connecting companies and business organizations with resources that will support their employees. So, sorry, I'm running two screens at once. Because the Wisconsin Caregiver Alliance has been engaged in employer outreach for several years now, we knew a few things before we started our survey. For example, we knew that employers who are aware of the needs of working caregivers and how to support them, they can reduce hidden costs, such as their overhead costs, loss of institutional knowledge from losing staff, and loss of productivity. They can also increase their productivity when they support their employees, and they retain them better and improve their recruitment efforts. And that was found through a Harvard Business School study that was done. We also knew that studies in other states recommend assessing the needs of caregivers in the workplace and exploring different policies and resources to support them. Caregivers, we knew, are also not likely to use FMLA as much as some employers think. Even though most employers think of FMLA as a primary tool for supporting employees with caregiving responsibilities, most working caregivers actually save unpaid FMLA for a major crisis. Because it's unpaid, they're not likely to use it if they don't have to, and they save it for the absolute worst scenarios. So they usually do not use that as a solution to coping with day-to-day responsibilities of providing care for someone. And we also we knew even before we started and learned some more, that caregivers reported that they felt that they could continue meeting the needs of both their work life and their home responsibilities for longer if they had just a little bit more help. So that was really a positive note. So we decided to survey employers and working caregivers because we knew that there were things that we did not know about how Wisconsin workplaces are trying to manage the needs of their workforce. And this is a workforce for whom family caregiving responsibilities are becoming more common. attracting and retaining employees, is more difficult today than it has been in the past. And I think we've all been seeing that in the news and reading lots of articles about it. And the trend of trying to attract and retain workers was only exacerbated even further by the COVID-19 pandemic. So we designed our survey using an outline of the employed caregiver survey that was already available through the University of Wisconsin Extension. This is a free survey that's readily available to any employer who's interested in conducting their own survey to learn more about their own workforce and their family caregiving responsibilities. And we will provide you with the link to that. It's can be found right on the UW Extension webpage. But some other things, just to let you know about, we found out that 1 in 4 working age adults is providing care and balancing work. So that means 1 out of every 4 person you're looking to hire or either already have employed is in this situation. So we started surveying people in October of last year, and we used the definition as a working age, as a caregiver, as a working age adult providing care or financial assistance to an older family member, an adult child, or other loved one with a disability, or a spouse with a long-term illness. We looked at this really to be caregiving that's in addition to what is often thought of as traditional child rearing. So this isn't just raising a normal child as we would expect. So many of these caregivers are raising their own children, but in addition, providing this type of care. Those are the people we're talking about today. The survey was then completed by about, we have 564 individuals, and 79% of them who took this said that they had a family caregiving role. So they could have either been an employer or an employee with a caregiving role. So that's what we wanted to learn. And now I'm going to introduce you to my co-lead on this project, Harriet Redman, and she will tell you what we learned.
All right. And great. Thanks, Lynn, for staying in control of the PowerPoint. Appreciate that. I'm Harriet Redman, as Lynn mentioned, and I'm the founder and executive director for Wisconsibs, a statewide nonprofit that serves people who have siblings with disabilities. Our organization is a member of the Wisconsin Family and Caregiver Support Alliance. So that's how I got involved in this project, and myself and many other people have been involved in this project from various different nonprofits and agencies. I'm also a working caregiver. I have a 29-year-old son who has multiple disabilities and requires care 24/7. So respite means a lot to us. It means a lot to my husband and I to get a chance to get a break, but it also means a lot to Philip, who also needs a break from his aging parents. So this is an exciting mission to help support caregivers, and those of you that are on the call that are respite providers, thank you very much. That's so important, and your work is very much appreciated, even if you don't hear those words all the time. I know people really appreciate it. So as we go into the data that we found with this study, I want you to look at it from your perspective. And from your perspective, you can kind of check whether what we found with the people in the study, which was more than 400 people or 500 people, if that's true for you too, if that's true for you as a caregiver, if that's true for you as an employer, or maybe you're a respite provider. And I think as Lynn mentioned, what you'll find is for employers, it takes a little extra time to consider what is it that their employees who are also caregivers, what is it that would benefit them? What is it that they need? It's not a huge investment. It's a little investment to make a big difference. And as you can see from this slide, more than 8 in 10 caregivers reported having their work life interrupted. So that means for an employer, if their work is interrupted, that could reduce productivity, that could impact the schedule that they may have for their employees. So it's important to pay attention to caregivers and give them the support they need, because it's going to most likely it's going to interrupt their work. And you can go on to the next slide. The most common interruptions that we found were people that said they had to rearrange their work schedule. They had to leave work early, or they were at work, but they couldn't focus on work. Or they had to respond to some emergency calls. And to do that, they often use their lunch break or other breaks for caregiving. And a few other things that we learned is that 44% said that they had to miss days of work. And that can have an impact on the caregiver, especially if they're being paid hourly. That'll impact their income, but that also has a big impact on employers as they look to their employees to be productive. Many times people had to cut their hours. I know when our son was born and we learned that he had a disability, I had to do that. I had to reduce the number of hours I could work because Philip needed my help. And then a lot of people have to consider even leaving employment. 1 out of 4 caregivers will quit their jobs in order to continue with caregiving. And just a few things that we noted that people said to us in the survey. The just never knowing is stressful. I am lucky. My boss is fantastic. And we love to hear that. But we also heard, being a caregiver, it is used as an excuse by my supervisor to not rely on me, to reassign work. And even though I work many extra hours and am doing significant work. And one said, employer promotes work-life balance in words, but not actions. So employers need to be paying attention that caregivers do have some feelings about this. And it is significant in their impression of the management and their agency that they're working for, or their business that they're working for. Next slide. I always feel like I have to make a choice which is more important, the person I care for or my job. And with that, 56% of our caregivers indicated that their current situation is not sustainable. So that means over half of the caregivers, they're going to be doing something. They're going to either be considering quitting work, or reducing their hours, or using all their vacation for caregiving, but they're going to have to be doing something to help continue to be that caregiver. Let's look at some demographics. So of all the caregivers, nearly 8 in 10 performed at least one caregiving task in the last 6 months. So that says these aren't people that necessarily have the person that they're caring for in their homes, but they are performing some sort of caregiving task. And that can be just as stressful as having someone in your home that you're caring for. 56 were caring for parents. And I don't remember, Lynn, how our poll came through, but we know we do have some on the call that are caring for their parents. 18% are caring for a child with a long-term illness. 14% is caring for a spouse. 89% on this survey were female. Now that's a little overrepresented. We've done other surveys where it's a little bit more balanced and there are a few more males in it. And we do know that the majority of caregivers tend to be female, but those statistics are changing. However, in this study, most of the people that responded were female. 64% are over the age of 46, and most caregivers have been providing care for 1 to 5 years, spending up to 7 hours per week. So these are not the casual caregivers. These folks that took this survey, that participated in this survey, were pretty experienced at caregiving. And then a small group spent over 40 hours per week caregiving. That's a lot. We also wanted to know, how did COVID impact? Now, this was not the primary purpose for this study, but we were doing this in the middle of the pandemic. We needed to include that in order to understand some of the other data. Most everybody, you can see it's more than 50%, said that their caregiving responsibilities during COVID increased. That's probably no surprise to our audience today. Throughout COVID, balancing the caregiving and work life was a challenge. And I think we've, as caregivers, have probably all experienced that from time to time. Okay, let's move on. All right, I love this picture because you can see in this picture many things. You could see a spouse taking care of his wife while he's working, and maybe he's getting some help from someone else, but he's still keeping an eye on his wife's needs as he's working. Or this could be a sibling pair too, that brother's taking care of his sister who may need a little extra help while he's working, or making appointments, or otherwise occupied. 3 in 4 caregivers missed work during caregiving. So I know I have had to balance both, doing work while I'm also caregiving. I think a lot of people were doing that, but sometimes you just simply have to miss work and attend to your person. 1 in 5 caregivers use time off without pay. As Lynn mentioned, FMLA has not been automatically used. They just take time off, and that can work, but it can also produce some negative benefits, and that leads us to the next statement. 1 in 4, that's 25%, took no vacation in the past year. COVID is probably responsible for some of that, but I think caregivers and respite providers can also relate to having to give up those vacation days in order to care for their loved one that otherwise they might have a real vacation. All right, we're going to turn it back to Lynn to talk about what we can do about that, or some strategies.
Okay, thank you, Harriet. Yes, as an employer, when we think about the options that you have, as I said, one of our goals with this project is to really make sure that employers know that there are resources out there for you. You probably have some things in your own business, whether they're benefits you provide or an EAP or other things, but there are also free and low cost resources for you out in the community, which we would love to help you connect with. The Aging and Disability Resource Center is really the #1 shop to stop at for everything that a caregiver might need. The state of Wisconsin, my bureau, we actually are responsible for those. And the caregiver support programs come out of there. You can apply for Medicaid, you can apply for all sorts of different things. And so just knowing that they exist and being able to connect your employees to them can be a great help. Another thing that employers can do is, it's really important for supervisors to be well trained in what to do when they have a caregiving employee. They have an important role to play in helping reduce that employee's stress. First of all, they have to be trained in how to be able to know how to do that, how to make staff feel comfortable in even revealing that they are experiencing strain. Sometimes they don't even want to admit that they have caregiving responsibilities if they're afraid that their employer may not be understanding or may not help them work with that. So if a supervisor is able to have that rapport with the employees and is able to work with the staff to help them resolve conflicts they may be having, that's one of the most important things that an employer can do. You might also consider if there are work from home capabilities. A lot of us have been doing that throughout COVID, and we are doing it in ways that we didn't think were possible. We realize that there are some jobs for which it just isn't possible. If you work at a coffee house or a restaurant or something, you're not going to be able to work from home. We understand that, but there are a lot of jobs for which that may be an option. And so to be open to thinking about how that may work either on a temporary basis or potentially longer term, depending on what is needed. Again, the resources offered, think about what you're offering for resources and how employees are made aware of that. I think a lot of times we hear that caregivers, especially younger caregivers, if you're someone caring for an older adult, they don't know much about Medicaid yet. They don't know much about Social Security. They haven't had to do that. So a lot of this is new to them. And so sending them over to the ADRC, if you can do that in-house, that's great. But if they can't, the Aging and Disability Resource Centers, they have a lot of staff who are trained to talk to them, let them know the options that are available, because especially younger workers, it oftentimes comes out of the blue and they were not prepared for this. And so trying to learn all this information at the same time they're going through a crisis with a loved one can be a very stressful time. And then I guess we talked about flexible hours. That's another thing that our respondents told us that they really appreciated. Employers who said, okay, I understand you need to take someone to an appointment, you need to do something in your personal life or to care for a loved one, as long as you make it up later or somehow make up those hours and still get your work done. They really, really, really appreciate that and can really set a good relationship and loyalty, and that person being dedicated to your company. So I think I had mentioned at the beginning, some of the other strategies you may want to actually do this survey that we did. We tweaked it a little bit for our purposes, but the UW Extension offers a survey that's free to any employer, which you can get from their website. And you can use that to anonymously survey your own staff. And I think that anonymous part is important because, as I said, some caregivers they're a little leery of, they don't know, they don't want to tell anybody that they're under stress because it might make their employer think, well, they can't handle the job, they shouldn't get a promotion. They have all these fears in the back of their mind. So doing it anonymously, I think might really help you get some good information. Learn what resources are available to your employees within your own company. And then again, like I said, through us and through agencies like Harriet's, there are all sorts of community organizations that are available to provide supports. Consider what benefits you might want to add for your employees. Maybe that's flex time, maybe it's holding a lunch and learn. And I know a lot of times staff from the Aging and Disability Resource Centers or our family caregiving programs will actually come to your business and offer to do a lunch and learn to help share that information. And, your HR staff would be welcome to to come and join in on those too, to learn so that they would be able to share that information then later with employees. So that's always a great option. Mm-hmm.
If you click through there, I think those will pop up.
We'll try that.
Are they popping up? There's the strategies.
There you go.
There we go.
I was on my other screen. I apologize. Shouldn't run and present at the same time.
There we go.
Okay. And then the last thing is when you look at the full report that we are releasing, there is a worksheet that we included in the report for employers to kind of start setting your own goals and start thinking about what strategies you might use within your company so that you can, start doing some of your own outreach. It's a very simple worksheet to just help you jot down some ideas and maybe then take those to other people in your organization who might need to look those over, just start brainstorming. So we hope you take advantage of that. It's a nice little easy worksheet that I think will be helpful. And then here, we'll just kind of close up. I just want to let you know some of the people who are involved in the Wisconsin Family Caregiver Support Alliance. UW Extension, I can't thank them enough for all of the work they did, helping us gather this information and then put it together and make sense of it for us. So thank you, UW Extension, and I do encourage you to use that survey yourself. WisconSIBS, which is Harriet's organization for brothers and sisters of people with disabilities, my department, the Department of Wisconsin, Department of Health Services, and the Respite Care Association of Wisconsin. And then we've got GWAR down there in the bottom, which is the Greater Wisconsin Agency and Aging Resources. They kind of oversee aging and disability resources in a lot of the parts of the state and also provide information themselves. So those are some of the players. There are other organizations who help our alliance. And if you're not one of those and would like to be, we invite anyone to join us. If this is something that is near and dear to your heart, please join us. We have this work group working on this project as well as others. So we'd be happy to talk to you more about that. So.
And I'll just add a note, Lynn, that we have a full report, which is about 12 pages, and it includes that strategy sheet that Lynn mentioned, but there's also a 2-page report, and that's a very handy piece of information to pass along to employers that might be in your area that you'd like to encourage to support caregivers, or print it out and hand it to your employer. Say, I just attended this webinar and they were talking about working caregivers, thought you'd be interested. Just summarizes everything that we've shared here and what the survey revealed.
Right, and I can add that you can get that. I don't know, we can give it to Rachel and she can share it out to participants in this webinar. And we can get both of those to you, but they are at wisconsincaregiver.org as well. That is our Alliance and Family Caregiver Support Programs website. So if you've never visited the wisconsincaregiver.org website, I encourage you to do that.
So Lynn, I just put wisconsincaregivers.org in the chat, but I heard you say caregiver. So there's no S on caregivers?
No, there is not.
Okay, I will correct that.
Thank you so much for that. I'm gonna, I would say by the end of the business day today, I'm gonna have a recording up on our website, as well as my PowerPoint presentation and the Harriet and Lynn's, and I can make those. I do encourage you to check out their website, absolutely, but I'll also include it on our website as well. Are there any questions for Harriet or Lynn? Great. Margaret, I see I'm going to give you my email. I see a DM regarding RCAW, and you can feel free to reach out to me there. And I really appreciate Lynn and Harriet for joining us today, talking about this really important topic. And I can't thank you enough. Everyone, thank you for coming and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.